Warning, I will be playing devil's advocate for a large portion of this video. If you have any point you disagree upon, I'm more than happy to debate it with you in the comments or in the Discord server I hang out in, link in the description. But as far as shonen anime go, the word perfect is not an accurate description for almost anything. Even for what I consider to be the 5 greatest shonen anime of all time, being Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, Hunter x Hunter, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Gintama, and Magi. Not that I have anything against Hitman Reborn, One Piece, or Yu Yu Hakusho, or whatever. My point right now isn't to insult any shonen except for maybe Bleach or Fairy Tail. Okay, never mind that last comment. But anyway, here are my top 5. I could still probably do one of these 5 fatal flaw videos on each of those as well. So while I like a lot of what My Hero Academia offers, I do believe it is not perfection, and after much analysis, here are the 5 fatal flaws keeping perfection away from the series. If you're an MHA dick sucker, like a crap load of people seem to be these days, this video may not be for you. This is for people with an open mind only, and I also do want to comment that under the circumstances, an exceptionally good job was done keeping the series afloat as possibly the best anime of the year, and as an anime that will be remembered as one of the legendary shonens for years to come. Fatal flaw number 1, at its core, the power system. The moment I heard the word superpower, I thought the series was pretty much doomed, from what seemed to be a nostalgia shonen-like plot about the adventure of the underdog protagonist. I knew that this series would attempt to shine at a long-running stint where the viewers and characters grow together, be it in friendship and convictions and in power. Power development anime like this are the draw to many newcomers, and MHA is heavily focused on this power growth aspect as well, which is just one small reason why so many people, me included, fell in love with the series. This is unlike anime like Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, where there is extremely minimal power development throughout. Being that the plot plays a much larger role, it takes the focus off sheer strength and manages to pull off a battle shonen. In other power growth focused shonens like Hunter x Hunter or Naruto, there's Nen, or chakra, something anyone can attain and hone, where Lee can fight Gaara on an equal playing field, being the two extremes of hard work versus natural talent, whereas in MHA, the characters are stagnant with the abilities they're born with to a large extent. Quirkless Deku versus Todoroki wouldn't have been a Lee versus Gaara, no matter how much Deku would try, but it would be a one-sided slaughter. And despite how much Aoyama, a weak quirk user, would try, Bakugo would destroy them. The only way challenges are really presented to the protagonist are because he has yet to fully control his immense power, but his power is there nonetheless. This is where I would like to compare it to the best battle-written anime of all time, in my personal opinion, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and I'm talking about from part 3 and on. In other words, Stands. My initial reaction to Stands was, hey look, it's an original take on superpowers, where every power has its limitations, and those limitations for the most part do not grow throughout the series, being that Josuke's stand in episode 1 does the exact same thing Josuke's stand in episode 39 does. However, just by the fact that it has adventure in the title, I understood that the story was about the journey and growth in characters as opposed to the growth in strength that plays such a large role in My Hero Academia. I was skeptic at first, but the way these stagnant powers are depicted in JoJo's are the likes of which no other media has yet to accomplish. Because while different stands range in strength, each have their own clear advantages and weaknesses, and by the fact that you don't know the precise ability of your opponent's stand, you are at a major disadvantage, or even a 4-on-1 is not to your favor in the slightest. As a perfect and clear example to my point, at the end of part 3, the protagonist fights an enemy stand that has the exact same abilities, but better in each of those abilities. Not to mention his opponent is immortal and can regenerate. Yet, the protagonist is still victorious, purely due to brains and wit, and many sacrifices to figure out exactly what that stand can do. And I can give oh so many examples to how in JoJo fights, knowledge is power, and that's literally how every fight boils down. Whereas in My Hero Academia, for the most part, whoever was born with a stronger quirk isn't only at a slight disadvantage, but will demolish his foe. And even though it does not always happen, being that Stain has an incredibly weak quirk and was insanely threatening even against powerful quirks like Deku's and Todoroki's. But the truth of the matter is, Bakugo is as strong as he is because of luck that he was born with that power. Obviously there is room to grow, and obviously the series isn't so quaint, and there are people with weaker quirks that defeat people with stronger quirks. This also does sort of bring me to my next point, flaw number 2, being power continuity. Before I get into the nitty-gritty of what My Hero Academia did wrong here, I'd like to first point out what it did amazingly right. By the end of season 1, we saw All Might, the most powerful hero, go all out. So we immediately know the end goal, and that this series won't pull a Dragon Ball Bleach, where every main character outgrows everyone else unless less than 100 episodes, and the series is forced to continue throwing more and more powerful characters at him so that there's no eventual limit, making every stride he takes basically pointless. Remember how Frieza took out all the Saiyans, and now at this point Goku's stronger than the gods? Yeah, that. Also, in most shonens, there's an ability I like to call beginner's luck, where if it's the first time we see a character or an attack, it's way more powerful than the next time. My favorite example is probably Amaterasu from Naruto, where it's a technique that produces an inextinguishable black flame that consumes anything that it erupts upon. It also erupts upon anything that you look at with your Mangekyo Sharingan. In other words, it's an unstoppable attack that moves at the speed of sight, and needless to say, the first time Sasuke uses it on the 8 Tails, it's a one-hit KO, despite him getting his ass served to him a minute beforehand. Needless to say, this Amaterasu attack does nothing for the remainder of the series. Same with Ichigo's Bankai and almost every shonen villain we see the second time. Another Naruto example would be, all the revived Akatsuki members in Naruto were weaker than random Jonin, despite when they were alive, they did not have regenerative powers, like they did when they were revived. It took forever to take down even one of them. My Hero Academia had its own set of failures, despite not quite being as sporadic. And while I can bring many examples of this, if I was looking under the scope, I'd rather focus on the protagonist for emphasis of this point. Deku's flick, as I've calculated in my 50 sarcastic facts video, is moving faster than light, looking at the surface area of his finger that catches the air to produce winds stronger than a typhoon. So, if full cowl, or his held back punches, are only 5% of his power, it's still 15,000 kilometers per second. So punching Todoroki in the stomach, or Stain in the face, which he did put his all into, would be basically like Stain's head getting smashed into by a car moving at 54 million kilometers per hour. But both Todoroki and Stain just walk it off, despite getting hit like this multiple times, instead of turning into splatter. This is the same for Bakugo's explosions, that if they have the strength to propel him aerially, they should rip his arms from their sockets, as well as while launching Deku, it should have obliterated Deku, because explosions, by default, don't only propel, you know. And speaking of their propulsive power, if that's a word, why is it that when he makes these massive blasts, it doesn't blow him backwards at light speed if those little explosion bursts can be used as turbo power? Or when All Might knees Bakugo in the chin with enough force to send him flying into the 3rd story of a building, quite frankly, Bakugo should no longer have a face. Just like there's no reason why Kurogiri, with the quirk that he has, he can't just warp All Might's organs out of his body, and the end. Oh, and plot armor-wise, Naruto's Tailed Beast mode made a hell of a lot more sense than past one-for-all users helping Deku to self-destruct his own fingers to break out of mind control, which is technically a quirk. In other words, Shinso's DNA gives him this power. It's not some Naruto genjutsu that Shikamaru broke out of by, oh man, breaking his own fingers. Good thing MHA's original, but continuing with more quirks at this point would basically be beating a dead horse. So let's move on to flaw number 3, the plot development. As far as Hunter x Hunter, One Piece, Naruto, and many more, the story flowed seamlessly from arc to arc, developing an overarching universal level plot, as well as each arc's plot in itself. MHA does not really do this justice. In the second season, we have a little clusterfuck of random activities that gave the characters something to do at all times. Whether the school planned a tournament, which, while fun, had no inter-arc plot growth. But it's cool because we get to see our favorite characters fighting. Moving on to the school planned hero shadowing exercise, which is cool because we get to see some of our favorite characters fighting. Moving on to the school planned student versus teacher exam, which was cool because we were able to watch our favorite characters fighting. But the purpose to all this and the flow between it was basically non-existent, which is why my favorite arc was the 2-episode Stain arc, because it wasn't just proactive planning on the teacher's behalf, where everything went according to the schedule, and made there be some heroic reaction on the protagonist's side. This point makes Yu Yu Hakusho's Dark Tournament way better than My Hero Academia's tournament by default, and Naruto's Chunin exams more riveting than the MHA schooling, because there is a level deeper to pure training, because the teacher said train and get stronger under supervision and everything will be okay. Being that these two mentions are between 10 and 25 years old, they may not be as fresh in your memory, but I assure you, they aren't worse. Number 4 is basic character flaws. Starting with the support characters, and when I say support characters, I mean everyone who wasn't the star of an arc yet. Honestly, for me, this wasn't really a major issue, but a good friend of mine, Misty Crenexia, is of the mind it is, and I do hear him. One of the reasons why Hunter x Hunter is his favorite anime is because they were very directed on the cast and never lost focus on their core, developing the crap out of Gon and Killua, and even completely flushing out important support characters like Kurapika or Hisoka that didn't even play a role in every arc. Or how in One Piece, we got to know the Straw Hats extremely well to the point that we feel like we're part of their family, and this is unlike how in many shonen, they keep introducing new characters that don't get flushed out, like for example in Naruto, where the second round of the Chunin exam alone created Lee as one of my favorite and most relatable characters of all time, and then during the next 500 episodes he was just sort of there in the background, where he did nothing and got most of his screen time in filler arcs. Or in Bleach, where they introduced 13 freaking squads, each with a captain, a vice captain, and a fuck ton of members that will sort of be around around from now on. Misty sees the MHA class tab this issue having 20 students that sort of fill up space, while we don't know or give a crap about Sugar Boy, or even fan-favorite characters like Froppy need half-baked filler episodes, even though we have no idea what kind of motivation or reasoning they may have pushing them forward, and they don't have the development they deserve. I'm not terribly opposed to this because frankly, in a class of 20 kids, I would have my group of close friends, aka the main characters, and then the other 10-15 acquaintance-level friends that I know on a more shallow level. What is a problem in my mind, however, is the villain situation, which is pretty abysmal. And before I get into that, I realize and appreciate Stain as a way above average shonen villain, and him being the harbinger of a much larger force of villainy is completely acceptable in my eyes to the extent that I do praise it. Not that Stain has anything on Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood Scar, as far as anti-societal villains go, but okay. However, aside from Stain and his 2 episodes of awesome glory, the overarching villain of the series, at least up to this point, does 2 major things wrong as far as shonen villains, on an organizational level and on a individual level. On an organizational level, there is a problem because his main goal is being bad for the sake of being bad and destroying good because it's good. Or, I must take over the world because it would be cool. No matter what other details are put into their awesomeness, they cannot, again, by default, hold a candle to the organization like the Akatsuki or the Phantom Troop, where there are motives and intentions on an internal level. And the defense that, no, really, it's the League of Villains is doing it out of revenge because all my... that ranges somewhere between horse crap and bullshit, because the revenge is because Mr. All for One got taken down. But, why was he taken down again? Oh yeah, because he was evil for the sake of being evil. And somehow, there's a large group of psychos with no internal politics or power struggle that decided to join him, because, those guys are interesting and deep characters. Problem 2, on an individual level, the shonen villains that I love, and this goes for pretty much all of them, I need to be able to see out of their eyes. I need to see from their perspective, which is what made Stain great for those 2 episodes that he existed. Even as far as the leader of a group, like Meruem, Doflamingo, or Pain, they're characters that I understood as far as where they've come from and where they're trying to end up, despite commanding intense fear. Mr. All for One and Shigaraki fail on these levels to the extent that they're more of an annoyance to the plot than the driving force of it. We're still in the early stages of the story, so this may not actually be the case, but this is the vibe a weathered critic like me is getting by the situation, although by now, I should have a video out explaining the metaphoric awesomeness of the League of Villains, but that's really not where I'm coming from here on a simplistic visual level. And the third group of character is the protagonist. His goal is to become the greatest hero for fame, and quite frankly, that equals ego. This is a basic underlying problem for an unfortunately huge percent of shonen protagonists that I don't even need to name, making Ed, Aladdin, Gon, Tsuna, Yosuke, or any JoJo a beautiful rarity. Oh, and by the way, Gon ain't getting off free. I will destroy him another day. Never fear, no one is safe. And finally, flaw number 5, the impact on society and politics, or the lack thereof. Calling this a flaw altogether is maybe a bit of a stretch. It's more of wasted potential than it is an error, but it's something that really could have been maximized. One way that My Hero Academia is almost completely original compared to other anime of its genre is that something happened to our world to make it what it is now. And while the initial political results are touched upon, at this point in the universe's timeline, everything is just neatly worked out to how there is this profession called hero, and it's extremely respected and coveted, thereby making anybody who decides to be a villain a borderline hopeless moron. But as far as society or racism, everything's just sort of working perfectly. Hell, our world isn't nearly as complicated as far as quirks and people being born so differently, yet there is a hell of a lot of political crap going on between countries and within countries down to the individual level. And I feel like this can really be expanded upon in this universe, especially being that it is an evolved version of ours. While Naruto would be a good anime to talk about at this point, how it's honestly a developed society with rules in place between nations, whether they actually trust each other or if it's just a facade. In my opinion, the best battle shonen example of this is by far Magi, with its ethical and internally political infrastructure, even within each individual nation, is so unbelievably well thought out, and each of the many sides are so clearly logical in their mindsets, it makes a beautiful universe that on the outset, even characters and magic aside, it is brilliant. And frankly, My Hero Academia could have done something along those lines, while instead, the world is running like a well-oiled machine. It's just sort of running too perfectly for my taste, with the only issues in the universe being the sporadic psychos and Deku's next exam. All that said, I think we can all agree that My Hero Academia is a really wonderful breath of fresh air for the anime community, being the first really solid, long-running, capable anime since Fairy Tail, which frankly, in my personal opinion, caused a slight hiccup in the business that My Hero Academia possibly fixed. Next season, Black Clover's starting, so here's to a new age of solid, longish anime. I'd love to debate these points I've made with all of you, either in the comments or on Discord, as I've mentioned, link in the description, and let me know if you want more 5 Fatal Flaw videos. Feel free to give a like and a subscribe, and check out my decoded look on what My Hero Academia actually represents in our world, being one of my favorite videos, and the 5 fatal flaws that I pointed out on the Netflix Death Note, which was honestly a lot easier to write than this, and sort of lose my temper halfway through that one, so that was sort of fun. But in any case, have yourself a most wonderful evening, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for stopping by.